I always thought the worst part of buying an old house would be the plumbing or maybe the mold. You prepare for cracked foundations, faulty wiring, creaking floors. You don't prepare for something, living inside the walls. We found the house through an estate sale. It had stood empty for decades, the kind of place you'd expect to find mice, not nightmares. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Margaret Tillman, had passed away alone. No heirs, no will, just a lifetime of forgotten things and silence locked behind heavy doors. My fiancée, Grace, is a preservation architect. She fell in love with the house instantly. It has bones, she said, running her hands over the weather-warped banister. Old, beautiful bones? Ironic now. The house was a 3-story Victorian on a neglected street in upstate New York. Peeling paint, ivy-choked walls, windows like blind eyes. But Grace saw beyond it, she always did. Within a week, we'd closed on it. Within 2, we'd moved in. We didn't find the skeleton until the 4th night. We were working in the study, tearing down layers of sickly green wallpaper to reveal the original wood paneling beneath. The room smelled of rot and something metallic, faint and sharp. I assumed it was old wiring or maybe rust. Grace didn't notice. Around midnight, we pulled the final strip of wallpaper from the north wall. That's when we saw it. A clean vertical line, slightly raised, like someone had resealed a narrow rectangle of the wall, maybe 6 feet tall, 2 feet wide. Grace tapped it. Hollow. Could be an old dumbwaiter shaft, she suggested, already searching for her multi-tool. Let's open it. I hesitated. Shouldn't we, I don't know, check the blueprints or something first? Grace grinned. Come on, where's your sense of adventure? The panel came away easier than it should have. Beneath it was a thin wooden door, sealed shut with iron nails long gone to rust. Grace pried them free, one by one, until the door creaked forward with a low groan that sounded disturbingly like exhalation. Behind it, blackness. She shined her phone light inside. Looks like a crawl space, she murmured. I leaned closer. It wasn't a crawl space. It was a cavity. And in that cavity was a skeleton. But here's the thing. It wasn't just bones. The skeleton had scraps of flesh still clinging to it, dark, leathery, like dried fruit. The eye sockets weren't hollow. They were filled with something gelatinous, glistening wet. The rib cage expanded subtly like a slow-motion breath and then deflated again. Grace screamed. I stumbled back, hitting the opposite wall, heart slamming so hard I felt it in my teeth. The thing breathed again. Not fast. Not frantic. Just one long, patient inhale. Then nothing. We called the police. They arrived quickly, a young officer named Ramos and an older detective who introduced himself only as Danner. Ramos shined his flashlight into the wall and went completely still. Danner didn't speak for a long time. Then, in a flat voice, he said, "You found it." "It?" I asked. He turned to us. "You didn't open anything else?" We shook our heads. "Don't," he said. They sealed off the study and called for backup. Forensics, hazmat, people in suits. We weren't allowed back in. At 3 a.m., Danner sat us down in the kitchen and asked us to recount everything. We told him about the wallpaper, the hollow wall, the panel, the thing inside. "You said it was breathing?" he asked. Grace hesitated. "I know how it sounds." "No, you're not wrong." He didn't elaborate. When he left, I followed him to the porch. "What was that?" I asked. "A body? Some kind of animal? What the hell is going on?" Danner didn't answer. But just before he climbed into his cruiser, he said, "Whatever you do, don't try to listen to it. Don't let it talk." Then he drove off. We didn't sleep that night. By morning, the study was locked off with police tape and a posted guard. Grace paced the halls like a trapped animal. I kept checking the wall, listening, straining to hear something. I don't know why. That night, I woke to a sound like breathing, deep, rasping, slow. It wasn't coming from the study. It was closer, right behind the bedroom wall. The next morning, the police were gone. No tape, no guard, no sign they'd ever been there. I called the station. "Detective Danner, please." Pause. "There's no Detective Danner," the woman said. "But he was here. Last night." "I'm sorry, sir. There's no one by that name in this department." I hung up. Then Grace screamed. I ran to the study. The panel was back in place. No nails. No seal. Just smooth, unbroken wall. She pounded on it. It was here. We saw it. I touched the plaster. Cold. Dry. No hollow echo. Just wall. We tried to move out that day. Packed everything. Called a hotel. But as soon as we backed out of the driveway, Grace started hyperventilating. Clawing at her chest. "I can't breathe," she gasped. "My lungs, they're full." I turned the car around. The moment we crossed the property line again, she exhaled as if surfacing from deep underwater. The next morning, my skin was bruised where I had touched the wall. Pale purple fingerprints. I hadn't told Grace about the breathing in our bedroom. About how some nights I dreamed the thing was speaking to me, not in words, but in shapes. Dark, geometric sigils etched into my thoughts. I hadn't told her I woke up with dust in my mouth. Plaster dust. That evening, we found something worse. We were pulling up the floorboards in the attic when Grace froze, crowbar in hand. What is that? It was another panel. Same size. Same shape. This time, we didn't open it. Not yet, because I could hear what was behind it. And this one wasn't breathing. It was whispering. We stared at the new panel in silence. No sound except for the wind whining through the attic vents. But I could feel it like pressure behind my ears. A whisper that wasn't quite sound. Not yet. Grace looked pale. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Let's leave it, I said. We call someone. Anyone. A priest. A historian. I don't know. She nodded too quickly. Yes. Yeah. We don't touch it. But by the time we got back downstairs, something had changed. There was a note on the kitchen table. Yellowed paper. Slanted, spidery handwriting. She still breathes because we never listened. He whispers because we did. No signature. No explanation. Just that. We didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, Grace was gone. Her car was still in the driveway. Phone on the kitchen counter. Her shoes, the ones she always wore for restoration work, sat neatly by the front door. No note. No signs of a struggle. No sound, not even the usual creaks and groans of the old house. Just silence. And behind that silence, breathing. Only now it wasn't from the wall in the study. Or the attic. It was everywhere. I searched the house room by room, calling her name. In the basement, I found something new. Another panel. Smaller this time. Just 2 feet square. Nailed shut with copper tacks. I didn't open it. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly. I backed away, turned to leave, and noticed something on the far wall. A faint outline, like charcoal dragged across old concrete. A drawing. 3 human figures. One had a black circle where the head should be. One had a hollow chest. The third had no outline at all, just smudges and distortion, like the paper couldn't hold its shape. Beneath them, in looping cursive. She took the breath. He took the voice. You take the rest. I called the police again. This time, a different voice answered. A woman. I'd like to report a missing person, I said. Her tone turned cautious. Name? Grace Eddings. My fiancée. She disappeared from our house last night. Address? I gave it. There was a long pause. Sir, that property is condemned. No, it's not. We bought it. We live here. Another pause. The Tillman estate has been vacant for over 30 years. Are you calling from inside the property? I felt cold. Yes. The line crackled. Then I suggest you leave immediately. Click. I tried again, cell phone, landline, 911. No response. No connection. Just silence or static. It was as if the outside world had sealed us off. Or maybe we'd sealed into something. I tried to leave, packed a bag, slammed the front door behind me. But the road out of the neighborhood didn't exist anymore. I mean that literally. Where there had once been cracked pavement leading back to town, there was now forest. Dense, black, and silent. I turned around and the house was right behind me. Closer than it should have been. Watching. That night, I finally dreamed of Grace. She stood in the attic, barefoot, her hands pressed against the new panel. She was whispering something. I couldn't hear it at first, but as I got closer, her voice sharpened. Pierced. It's not a wall, she said. It's a mouth. And then the panel opened, just a crack, and something pulled her in. I woke to knocking. Slow. Rhythmic. Not on the door. On the walls. I followed the sound. Through the hallway. Up the stairs. Into the study. The panel was open again. But now the cavity behind it was empty. No skeleton. Just an old chair, wooden and splintered, like someone had been sitting there for a very, very long time. A deep groove carved into the seat. Faint bloodstains on the arms. Shackles on the floor. And the air smelled sweet. Like something rotting under sugar. There was a note nailed to the inside wall. The breath is free now. You opened the mouth. The next day, I went back into the attic. The whispering had stopped. The panel remained closed. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was looking for her. Maybe I just wanted it to end. But I opened it. Behind the panel was a tunnel. Narrow. Dry. Carved into brick and would like something had chewed through it. I crawled inside. At first, it was silent. Then, as I crawled further, I heard it again. Not breathing. Not whispering. Singing. Grace's voice. Low. Beautiful. Wrong. It sounded like a lullaby, but not in any language I knew. And I knew if I followed it far enough, I'd find her. But I turned back, because something else was singing too. Lower. Bigger. Older. When I emerged from the tunnel, it was night again. I had only been gone a few minutes, but the moon was high. I closed the panel. I tried to nail it shut, but the wood wouldn't hold, because it wasn't wood anymore. It pulsed, like skin. And behind it, the whisper began again. This time it said my name. Not like Grace. Not like anyone. Like the house itself. Later, I opened the front door. The neighborhood was back. The road was back. My car was there. But I didn't leave, because the note on the kitchen table had changed. She still breathes. He still whispers. And now you listen. And from inside the wall behind me, a heartbeat. The heartbeat didn't fade. It got louder. Not like a drum, but a wet, rhythmic thud, like something enormous and alive pulsing beneath the foundation. I pressed my hand to the floor and felt it beat beneath my skin, synchronized with mine. Or maybe the other way around. I packed again. This time, I didn't tell the house. I just ran. I made it 2 blocks before the trees began to bend. Not from wind, there was no wind, but inward, like they were watching. Leaning closer. Judging. When I looked back, the house had changed. It was taller. Windows where there hadn't been windows. A crooked steeple rising from the roof. Something wrong about the shadows, like they were all pointing inward. Like they were afraid to fall outward. I kept walking. But every street, every turn, every desperate sprint in a new direction brought me back to one place. The front door. Wide open. Waiting. I entered. This time, the walls were breathing again. Not subtly. Visibly. The wallpaper expanded with every inhale, fluttered with every exhale. A slow, living rhythm that made my teeth ache. And on the ceiling above the stairs, a new message smeared in dark brown. The house loves who feeds it. I knew what it wanted, but it couldn't have her. Not Grace. I went to the attic. The panel was sealed, but it had changed, no longer just wood and iron, but bone. Real bone. Pale ribs pressed together in a cage, curving outward to form a kind of twisted gate. I could see something moving behind them. I called her name. Grace. The motion stopped. A voice whispered back, ragged, barely human. You took too long. Then the bone door cracked open. And I saw her. She was curled in the corner of a space that shouldn't exist, a vast, dark cavity beneath the roof, deeper than the house could possibly contain. Her skin was thin, almost translucent, stretched taut over bones that weren't entirely hers. Her eyes glowed faintly like fogged glass from the inside. She opened her mouth. And something else spoke. A chorus. Male and female. Children and old men. Sobbing, laughing, pleading. All of it from her mouth. It eats memory first. Then time. Then names. Last comes skin. She reached for me. Don't let it wear me. I pulled her out. I don't remember how. My mind won't let me. 1 minute she was behind the wall. The next, she was in the bathtub, shaking, hair falling out in clumps, her spine arching like something was still pulling. She wouldn't talk for 3 days. During that time, the walls went still. No breath. No heartbeat. I dared to believe it was over. But Grace wasn't Grace anymore. Not entirely. The 4th night, I found her in the study. The original panel, the first one where we'd found the skeleton, was open again. She was talking to it. Soft, sweet, coaxing, like trying to calm a child. What are you doing? I asked. She didn't turn around. He's scared, she said. He doesn't want to go back in the dark. There's nothing in there, Grace. She finally turned. Her eyes were black. Not bruised. Not shadowed. Gone. Don't say that. I carried her out of the house. Literally dragged her through the front door while she screamed, kicked, begged. But the moment we crossed the threshold, she went limp. Eyes rolled back. Breath shallow. She was dying. I turned back, just an inch. Just enough to get my foot on the porch again. She gasped like a drowning woman breaching the surface. Then opened her eyes. And whispered. He won't let me leave. I went back inside alone. If it wanted someone, it could have me. If it needed a voice, or a body, or a name to wear, it could take mine. The house had claimed Grace. But I would bargain. In the basement, the panel was wide open now. Inside, stairs. Descending into a tunnel that hadn't been there yesterday. Or the day before. Or maybe had always been there, waiting. The air was thick, humid, filled with a coppery scent that stuck to my tongue. I went down. Each step groaned beneath me, and I realized they were made of something soft. Not wood. Flesh. And the walls around me weren't brick or stone anymore. They pulsed. Wet, red, ribbed like a throat. I was inside it. The tunnel led to a vast, circular chamber. The ceiling disappeared into black. The floor was warm and wet beneath my feet. In the center, a chair. And in the chair, me. Or something wearing me. The figure sat with perfect stillness, hands folded. Skin pale. Mouth sewn shut with black thread. Its eyes opened when I entered. My voice came from its mouth. Trade accepted. Then the room collapsed inward. I woke up on the study floor. Grace beside me. The walls normal. No breathing. No panels. No whispers. Just plaster. Just silence. We left that morning. The car worked. The road was there. The house didn't follow. But sometimes when we sleep, I dream of tunnels. Of walls that sigh. Of a chair in the dark waiting for someone else to listen. We thought we left it behind. The house, the walls, the breathing, all of it. The day we crossed the county line, Grace took her first deep, full breath in weeks. I watched her roll down the window, eyes closed, the wind tangling her hair like she hadn't tasted freedom in years. I almost cried. We didn't talk about what happened. Not for the rest of the drive. Not when we checked into a motel an hour outside the city. Not when we started sleeping with the lights on. We promised ourselves we'd forget. But houses don't just stay behind. Some of them follow. The motel room was small but clean. Beige wallpaper, thin walls, a buzzing fluorescent light in the bathroom. Still, it felt safer than anything had in a long time. Until the second night, I woke to the sound of scratching. Not rats. Not insects. Fingernails. Coming from inside the wall behind the headboard. I sat up. Grace was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Her face blank. "You hear it too?" I whispered. She nodded. "Should we call the front desk?" She turned to me. "He found us." I pulled the headboard away. Nothing behind it, no holes, no marks. But the sound didn't stop. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then whispering. Soft, wet, come home. I backed away from the wall like it was about to split open and drag us through. Grace didn't move. "Grace." "He's waiting," she said quietly. He said I still owe him a name. We left at dawn. Didn't check out. Didn't even take our bags. Just drove. Grace refused to look in the mirrors. She covered them with cloth, saying that's how he watches. I didn't argue. We found a rental cabin by a lake 3 towns over. Isolated. Wood stove. No Wi-Fi. No neighbors. For a week it was quiet. Too quiet. No wind. No birds. No insects. Like nature itself was holding its breath. On the 8th day, I found a note on the cabin table. Same handwriting as the first. Same yellowed paper. Breath travels. Voice follows. Walls remember. No one could have entered. I locked every door. I nailed the windows shut. But the note sat there like it had always been part of the cabin. That night, I found Grace in the bathroom, humming. The mirror was fogged even though there had been no hot water. I wiped it with my sleeve and froze. The reflection didn't match. She was still humming, still facing the mirror, but in the glass, her eyes were gone. Just twin black pits, swirling inward like drains. Her mouth moved in a whisper I couldn't hear, but my reflection mouthed the same words a moment before she did. Like something inside the mirror was teaching her how to speak. I grabbed her, pulled her away. She screamed. She didn't recognize me for hours. Sat in the corner, muttering, whispering to something I couldn't see. Sometimes answering questions I didn't hear. Other times, laughing. Finally, she whispered, "You should have let me stay in the wall." I didn't know what to say. So I stayed with her. All night, watching the walls. They pulsed once. Just once. But I felt it in my spine. The next morning, I woke up alone. There was a trail of plaster dust across the floorboards, leading to the closet. I opened it. She wasn't there. But the panel was. That same rectangular shape. 6 feet tall. 2 wide. Even here. Even here. I pressed my hand to it. Warm. Throbbing. I whispered, "What do you want?" It answered, "Finish it." I tore the panel open. Inside, a cavity. Empty. Except for a chair. And on the chair, my journal. The one I'd lost in the original house. I flipped through the pages. They were filled, not with my handwriting, but Grace's. Over and over. He needs a voice. He needs a name. He needs a shape. Then, at the very bottom, "He's wearing you already." I closed the closet. But the room had changed. The wallpaper was green now. Sickly green. The floorboards were darker. Stained. The same patterns. The same moldings. The same shape of the ceiling beam above me. It wasn't the cabin anymore. It was our house. The one we left. It had grown around us. Or we'd never left at all. Grace stood in the kitchen, her back to me, still, silent. I stepped toward her. Grace! She turned. It wasn't her. Not really. Just her skin. Her eyes. Something else behind them trying on her shape. "He has your voice now," she said. Then the walls sighed, and the floor opened beneath me. I fell forever. That's what it felt like. Not down exactly, but inward, as if the house had folded around me, inverted itself, and pulled me through some rotten, unseen wound. When I hit the floor, I expected wood. Instead, I landed on something soft, and breathing. It shifted under me like flesh. I scrambled to my feet. The room was circular, the walls curved and pulsing faintly. Damp, seamless. No windows, no doors. The only light came from above. But when I looked up, the ceiling wasn't there. Only darkness that felt like it was looking back. Something wet moved in the corner. Then a voice, familiar but wrong, echoed. "You never left. You just stopped noticing." I backed against the wall. It gave beneath me, not like plaster or drywall, but like muscle. The voice again. "We've been trying to teach you, but you only listen when we wear your skin." I shouted, "What are you?" Silence. Then something stepped out of the dark. It looked like Grace, but taller, elongated, hollow, the skin too smooth, as if poured over something that wasn't a person. She moved without joints, like her bones had learned to bend wrong. "You brought me back. You made the trade. Now he wears the walls." I turned to run, but there was nowhere to go. The room began to tilt. Gravity shifted. I wasn't standing anymore. I was sliding, pulled toward the center of the floor, which had opened like a throat. Inside, stairs. The same ones I'd seen in the basement. The ones made of flesh and bone. I didn't walk down. I was swallowed. The corridor tightened with every step. Like the house was getting narrower the deeper I went. As if it didn't want to fit me anymore, but fold me. Then I saw the pictures, carved into the walls. Scenes etched in black veins. A girl bricked inside a wall, her mouth sewn shut. A man with no face, only a gaping hole in his chest. A child staring into a mirror that showed someone else staring back. And then one final carving. Me, sitting in the chair, smiling. The corridor ended at a door. Old, wood warped and bleeding. A rusted knob. I touched it and felt it pulse. From behind it, a whisper. Not words. Just the sound of someone breathing my name. I opened the door. The room beyond was a perfect replica of our old study. Green wallpaper, creaking floorboards, but nothing in it was right. The chair was upside down, hanging from the ceiling. The windows showed nothing, just flat black, like the concept of space had given up trying to render reality. And on the wall where we'd found the first panel, another opening. No skeleton inside this time, just a mirror. It reflected the room perfectly, except I wasn't in it. Instead, he was. He looked like me. Same face, same clothes, but his eyes were hollow. Literally, just pits in his skull with faint light inside. He moved when I moved, until I stopped. Then he kept going. He leaned in close to the glass, smiled, and mouthed, "Grace is gone. You're next. Then we all go home." Then he pressed his hand to the glass. I felt it on my chest. I stumbled back. The room twisted, folded. The chair fell from the ceiling and crashed in front of me. But instead of breaking, it stood up on its own legs, upright and waiting. A note was nailed to the seat. "Sit, listen, learn." I didn't want to, but the room wouldn't let me leave. The door behind me vanished. I sat. The moment I touched the chair, I understood. Not in words, but in feelings. Terror, rot, birth. The memory of the house passed into me. Not like a story, but like a sickness. I saw every person who had ever lived here, and died here, and stayed here. I saw Margaret Tillman, the last owner, sewing shut her own mouth before disappearing into the attic walls. I saw the builders of the house, how they carved too deep and found something breathing beneath the earth, and built around it, not to contain it, but to feed it. And I saw Grace, She had never left the wall, because I never pulled her out. I only thought I did. When I stood up again, I was no longer afraid. I was part of it. I walked to the mirror, pressed my palm against the glass. My reflection smiled. Not me. Him. He leaned forward. Now you understand. And the mirror dissolved. I woke up in bed. A bed I didn't recognize. The room was unfamiliar. But beside me, Grace. Peaceful. Breathing slow. Like she'd never left. Like none of it had happened. Was it a dream? A hallucination? I turned to the window. The view outside wasn't the lake. It wasn't the forest. It wasn't anything. Just walls. Stretching forever. Breathing. I didn't wake up. Not really. Because I hadn't slept. I just shifted. From one version of the house to another. Like flicking through radio static and suddenly you land on the same frequency but a different language. Grace was beside me. Breathing. But too evenly. Like she was practicing it. Like she wasn't sure what lungs were supposed to do anymore. I got up. The bedroom looked normal if you ignored the fact that the walls breathed in sync with her. I stepped into the hallway. It was longer than before. Much longer. The kind of long that doesn't obey floor plans. Family portraits lined the walls. Only they weren't our family. At first glance, the faces were familiar. But the longer I looked, the more they changed. Eyes moved. Mouths twitched. Some smiled after I looked away. And one portrait, a young boy in suspenders, had my face. Not just a resemblance. It was my face. Smiling. With no teeth. At the end of the hall, the study. Again. But this time the panel was already open. Inside, a light flickered. I approached. And heard Grace whispering behind me. Don't go. Every time you open it, more of you stays behind. I turned, but she wasn't there. Just the echo of her voice in the wallpaper. And the faint outline of her handprint pressed into it, still fading. I entered the cavity again. This time it was a staircase spiraling downward, but impossibly so. The angle of descent bent space like a spiral you could fall through forever. The walls were made of photographs. Polaroids. Pinned in layers. All of me. Sleeping. Eating. Staring at the mirror. Some I remembered. Some I didn't. Some hadn't happened yet. One showed me sitting in the chair. Smiling. My skin pulled back, too tight. Eyes black pits. Captioned in scribbled ink, he's almost ready. At the bottom of the stairs I entered a nursery. The air smelled like talc and mildew. A mobile spun above a wooden crib made of old bone, the kind that didn't belong to animals. The music played. A lullaby I couldn't name but knew. The kind you hum without realizing, the kind that teaches your blood to forget it was ever yours. Inside the crib. A breathing shape. Wrapped in moldy linen. I stepped closer. It opened its eyes. My eyes. And it whispered. You were born here. I ran. Back through the stairwell. But it was gone. The room behind me now led to a hallway of mirrors. No frames. Just mirror after mirror after mirror lining both walls. Each showed a version of me. Aged. Rotting. Replaced. One had no skin. One was made of ash. One stood motionless, smiling wider and wider until his cheeks split. And in the last mirror at the end stood Grace. She opened her mouth. And something stepped out of her. Not a figure. A shadow made of breath and teeth and walls. And it pointed at me. The mirrors shattered. Not with sound, with silence. Like the room swallowed every decibel to protect the lie we call reality. When I opened my eyes, I was in the bathtub. Our old bathtub. In the old house. Water up to my chest. Freezing. Grace was beside me, motionless. Eyes open. Skin pruned. She turned her head and smiled too slow. You brought me back, she said. But he came with me. I got out. Slipped on the wet floor. When I stood again, the bathroom was gone. Now I was in the dining room. The table was set. Candlelight flickering. Empty plates. Except for one. At the head of the table. With my name carved into the wood. I sat. Because I had to. The house needed me to. I lifted the cloche. Beneath it, my own face. Eyeless. Mouth sewn shut. But still breathing. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The moment I tried, the breath left me like the house had taken it back. The wallpaper peeled on its own. Behind it, hundreds of mouths. Open. Panting. Whispering. He is almost full. The chandelier above the table shifted, bending downward until it resembled ribs. It began to pulse. Like a heart. Mine. The room folded. And suddenly I was back in the chair. The chair. The one constant. Facing the wall. Facing the panel. Still open. Still waiting. The note in my lap this time said, one more breath. One more story. One more wall. And I understood. It didn't want to trap me. It wanted to be me. I sat in the chair. Because I had no choice. Because the house had taken all the options and left only instructions. The panel in front of me began to grow. Its edges stretched like skin, warping into a gaping wound in the wall, deep and dark and lined with bone. The light dimmed, the temperature dropped, and from inside that wound something stepped out. It wore my face, but not like the mirror versions I'd seen before. This one fit, too perfectly, the exact tilt of my head, the scar above my left brow, the way I crack my knuckles when I'm nervous. But the eyes, they weren't mine. They were older. He walked across the room slowly, barefoot, the floorboards creaking under each impossibly calculated step. He didn't speak, not at first, just watched me, studied me. Then, in my voice, he said, "Do you like how you taste?" I didn't answer, because I suddenly couldn't remember how to speak. He crouched in front of me, hands folded like he was mimicking prayer. "You're doing well. You've fed us so much already. All those little fears, all that doubt. Delicious." He tilted his head. "But you've gone too long without giving us a name." Behind him, the room shifted. The furniture bled. The walls wept plaster. The window showed a street that no longer existed, the one from our real life, maybe. A glimpse of what we used to call normal, but distorted like it was remembered by something that never understood humanity in the first place. He stood and walked to the window, tapped on it. The glass rippled. "This was your life once." Then he turned to me. "Want it back?" I nodded before I realized what I was agreeing to. He grinned, and for the first time his face cracked. A thin split down the center, not of skin but of mask. The shell of me peeled away like old paint, and underneath, there was nothing. A black cavity, a void shaped like a man, and it was hungry. I ran, back through the hallway of portraits, now screaming silently, through the study, down the stairs which had multiplied, gone on forever. The air thickened. My breath grew heavy, syrupy, like I was inhaling memory. And when I reached the bottom, Grace was there. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking through me, at something just behind. I turned. He was there, no longer wearing me, now wearing her, perfectly, even the way she laughed without sound. "You traded me," she said, smiling. "You thought the chair was yours, but it's mine. It always was." I staggered back. "Grace." She stepped closer. "You never pulled me out of the wall. You pulled out the thing pretending to be me, and then it taught me how to wear it back." I fell to my knees. My throat closed. My lungs burned, and the house breathed for me. The room folded again. Now we were in the attic. But it wasn't the attic. It was all attics. A maze of angled ceilings and rotwood beams stretching forever, each one ending in a panel. Every panel breathed. Every panel watched. Grace walked ahead of me, barefoot and calm. "This is where the house keeps its favorites." I tried to speak, but my voice had been rewound. My mouth opened, and only dust came out. At the center of the attic maze was a well, made of teeth, circular, deep, alive, pulsed with each breath I didn't take. Grace stood on the edge and looked down. "He's full," she said. "He just needs a place to live." She turned to me. "Your story ends here. His begins." Then she fell backward into the well. The silence that followed was final. No air, no wind, not even the breath of the house. Just waiting. Then, from the mouth of the well, my voice echoed up. "Come sit. One more wall." I ran again, through corridors that changed behind me. The study, the nursery, the hallway with the mirrors. All of them now showing me smiling, smiling, smiling. Every time I blinked, a new one cracked. I didn't know where I was going, only what I was fleeing. But the house didn't want escape. It wanted performance. I stumbled into a theater. Red velvet curtains, dust-covered seats, a single spotlight on the stage. And in the center, the chair. Always the chair. A note on the cushion. "Sit, speak, be remembered." And behind the stage, an audience. Every seat filled. Every face me. Not copies. Not reflections. But versions. The me who stayed. The me who left grace behind. The me who never opened the panel. All watching. Waiting. Holding their breath. I sat. The spotlight narrowed. Focused. The microphone before me flickered with static. I leaned in, and my mouth opened. But what came out wasn't my voice. It was his. And that's how I got out. The words echoed across the theater. And that's how I got out. Not my voice, not my breath, but my story. And the audience, all of them me, began to applaud. Slowly, methodically, each clap synchronized like a ritual. Then they stood, in perfect unison, and began walking toward the stage. I couldn't move, not frozen, held. The spotlight burned hotter, tightening around me like a vise of light. The microphone crackled again. Tell it again. I didn't. I couldn't. I wouldn't. So the theater began to shake. The floorboards groaned like ribs cracking open. The air stank of copper and mold and old teeth. The first version of me reached the stage, a younger one. Eyes full of hope. Of ignorance. He grabbed my wrist, smiled, and said, "If you won't wear the story, I will." Then another version climbed up. Then another. And another. Each one began whispering pieces of the tale. Green wallpaper. She still breathes. A cavity in the wall. A chair that always returns. They surrounded me, pressing in, repeating the same sentences like a catechism. A closed loop. A trap made of memory. I screamed. Or tried to. The sound came out of them. Not me. The chair vanished. I fell backward through the stage and landed in the house again. But not as I remembered it. It was skeletal now. The beams exposed. The walls torn open to reveal endless cavities, each one filled with something breathing, something whispering, something watching. A voice, familiar, flat, echoed down the corridors. "You made the story real. You fed it. Now wear it." I wandered through the stripped bones of the house. Each room repeated something. The kitchen, knives spinning in the air, pointing at the ceiling. The bedroom, the bed pulsing like a lung. The nursery, the crib, again, but this time filled with Polaroids of Grace, every one of them blurred. And then the study. Of course, the study. The panel was open. And the skeleton was back. Only now it wasn't half decayed. It was fresh. Skin peeled clean. Eyes blinking. And it was smiling at me. Because it had my face. It leaned forward. Whispered. "They don't build houses to last anymore. But we do." The walls sighed. The floor breathed. The ceiling cracked open like a jaw. And for a brief moment I understood. The house had never been haunted. It was the haunting. A structure for something older than memory, something that fed not on death, but recognition. It didn't want victims. It wanted witnesses. A final staircase opened in the floor. Not made of wood or flesh, but words. Carved into each step. A timeline of the story. You moved in. You opened the panel. You found her. She found you. You traded. You ran. You came back. You Saturday. You spoke. You stayed. I climbed down. Each step burned underfoot, but I couldn't stop. Because now I needed the ending. I had to know how the story closed. If it closed at all. At the bottom, a single door. Covered in mirrors. Each one reflecting a version of me I didn't want to remember. The coward. The liar. The one who left her. The one who never looked back. The one who opened the second panel. They watched me. Silent. And then whispered in one voice. "You're not the author. You're the ink." I opened the door. And stepped into the room between rooms. Pure white. Silent. Empty. Except for a desk. A single light above. And a sheet of paper. Blank. No pen. No keyboard. Just expectation. I sat. Because I always sit. And the paper whispered. "Write what happens next." I stared at it. Hands shaking. Then faintly a sentence appeared on its own. Not typed. Not handwritten. Just formed. He sat in the chair and told them everything. I whispered, "No." And the paper ripped itself in half. From inside the rip, eyes. Thousands. Staring. Blinking. Begging. And one mouth. Speaking with my voice. "Finish it." I stood. Backed away. But the room shrank. Every wall pressing inward. I reached for the paper. Tried to erase the words. But my fingers sank into it, sunk through it. And suddenly I was inside the story again. A loop. A recursive breath. And I realized I'd never left the wall. Not really. Not once. I had been telling the story from inside it the entire time. Grace stood at the edge of the room. Smiling. one hand pressed into the plaster, the other holding a note. She held it out to me. I read it. The only way out is if someone else listens. And behind her, a new panel began to form. Fresh, clean, waiting for someone else. The panel behind Grace was smooth. No nails, no seams, just an invitation, a place for something or someone to be stored. She stood beside it like a sentry, not guarding it, guiding it. Someone has to take your place, she said softly. That's how stories work. One leaves, one enters. I shook my head. You said the house wanted a name. It got one. It got mine. Grace smiled, and for a moment, her face flickered. The skin shimmered like heat on asphalt. Her voice dropped into something deeper. It didn't just want a name. It wanted a narrator. The air thickened again. A low hum began vibrating in the walls like the entire house was waiting, breathless. Grace, I said, reaching for her. Come with me. We'll find the exit. We'll burn the place down if we have to. But she didn't move. You can't burn it, she whispered. You've already rebuilt it. Every word you spoke, every part you remembered. You kept laying bricks. I stared at her. She wasn't Grace anymore. She was the story of Grace, built from my voice, from my guilt. The panel behind her slid open on its own. Darkness inside. Not a tunnel, not a cavity, but a mouth, lined with teeth made of wood, bone, plaster, and letters. They shifted in and out like gears in a printing press. Inside, I could hear typing, pages turning, whispers, some of them mine, some not, some yours. I don't want to go back in, I said. She nodded. But someone has to. I looked past her. To the doorway. There was one now. An exit. Golden light beyond it. Soft air. Something like a world. But the moment I stepped toward it, the mouth growled. And the panel door began to close. Slow. Inevitable. Grace held out the final note. The house must contain a voice. Or the story spills. I understood then. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about you. The one listening. The one watching. The one who knows everything now. The house has rules. A loop must be closed. Every breath taken must be given back. Every story told must be heard. And now that you've heard mine, you're inside. I turned to Grace. She stepped aside, letting the panel close behind her. I walked to the wall, touched it. It pulsed. And I whispered, "Take me." I woke up in silence. No chair. No house. Just a blank room. A single mirror. And a note on the ground. Now tell them what you saw. I stepped closer to the mirror. My reflection was missing, but I could hear it speaking. My voice, your voice, ours, repeating one final phrase. The skeleton we found in the wall was still breathing. I didn't remember stepping into the wall. I only remember becoming it. Not like possession, more like absorption. Thoughts stretched thin across lath and plaster. My memories pressed like fingerprints into wallpaper that only looked blank until the light hit it right. The house didn't keep me hostage. It kept me as structure. And every room whispered pieces of me. Every creak was a confession. Every sigh, a memory I'd buried too deep to admit. I watched Grace from behind the walls. She still walked the halls sometimes. But she wasn't searching. She was tending. Like a gardener. Feeding the house with new memories. New stories. New names. Every time she picked up a phone call and told someone about the house, the floorboards grew longer. Every time she shared what we'd seen, a new panel formed. Every listener was a brick. Every reader was a nail. You're part of it now, too. There's no door for me anymore. I know because I've looked. The attic? Now a lung. The study? A mouth. The nursery? An echo chamber for the names we tried to forget. And the basement. The basement is where the new chairs grow. Sometimes they bring people in. Real people. Tourists. Historians. Psychics. They all think they're just visiting. But when they leave, they're quieter. And later, some return in dreams. Not theirs. Yours. Let me tell you what happens next. Because that's the trick. You think this is the end? It's not. Because now you've finished the story. You've heard it. And in doing so, you've made space. A crack in your wall. A little hollow behind the paint. The kind where things breathe. Things that remember. Check your room. Not now, later. Tonight. When it's quiet. When the air feels heavier than it should. You might hear something behind the drywall. Just a whisper. Just a breath. And maybe if you listen close, you'll hear me. Or maybe you'll hear yourself. Because that's how it works. One voice leaves the wall. Another takes its place. You didn't think the story could stop with me, did you? It never does. It's told again every time someone leans in and asks, Did I ever tell you about the skeleton they found in the wall? And someone answers, the one that was still breathing? Then comes the silence. Then the chair. Then the panel. And then you. The end. Or rather, the next beginning.